Welcome to the Global Tech Leaders Podcast, where we help business leaders and individual contributors with actionable insights to hit their number and figure out the nuances of truly operating a business globally today, squeezing the essence of the lessons learned from the planet's top tech leaders. This is your guide to joining the fast track to global market scaling.
So on today's show, we are joined by Saeed Ahmad, MD of the Middle East North Africa region at CallSign. CallSign is on a mission. They are pioneering digital trust through proprietary technology that uniquely mimics the way humans identify each other in the real world. So very keen to get into that. It's a positive identification of genuine users, delivering privacy, safety, with minimal frictions, whilst ensuring bad actors are blocked through swipe and type users can be personally recognized. So very keen to explore a little bit about that. You're very experienced in the banking trade, Saeed. Very much want to get into how you've transformed your career from, traditional to digital advocacy, heading up a very unique part of the world, I would say. So welcome to today's show, first and foremost.
Ross, no, thank you very much. Delighted to be here. Love to share my thoughts on where we are and what we're doing.
Fantastic. Well, right from the top, let's kick off. It's all about you, Saeed. So take us through your career, what brought you to where you are, some of those twists and turns, inflection points and decisions you've taken along the way to heading up Middle East and North Africa at CallSign, if you would.
Well, I've actually got a long history, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. Otherwise, we'll take up a lot of bare time.
That's okay.
Literally, I've spent the past 25, nearly 28 years now in technology, in the technology industry. I focused initially in data security the first 5 years. I haven't left university. I worked very closely with the government's antivirus working group, established a lot of the early thinking around how we secure perimeters and organizations at major corporations. I segued pretty quickly actually into this thing called the internet some 21 years ago, right? It was just kicking off at that time. And really, my career began there at IBM. I spent the better part of the first 10 years at IBM designing, solution architecting, and building large-scale digital transformation and commerce websites, both banking and retail banking websites. That was a real eye-opener for me, a grounding for me in the technology, and some of the fundamental principles behind digital transformation. We did big things. The big things like, Wimbledon.com. Think about everything that happens around Wimbledon, from seeing the scores on the TV screen, synced with the mobile app, synced with the web app. Back then, there was no such thing as cloud. There was no such thing as those wonderful technologies we have today. We had to hand crank design and build all that stuff ourselves. So that was a real baptism of fire for me. And from that, worked very closely with industry, and actually I spent the first 5 years of my IBM career cross-industry, then focused in banking, retail banking and investment banking in particular, and then commercial banking, and built that expertise doing large-scale system integration work and banking, core bank replacements and channel build-ups. Having spent 10 years doing that, I then joined KPMG to start, there's a group of 5 of us, to start essentially what was KPMG Consulting from scratch. And we did that for 10 years pretty much, and we grew the business to a £200 million business. And in that, again, digital transformation was the core of everything that we did. Personally did a lot of IT strategy work, a lot of merger and acquisition work, as well as just pure digital transformation. And in that, I helped build and establish Lloyds Banking Group's digital presence with the team that was there 10 years ago and actually still running strong today. That led me to eventually leaving KPMG and joining Lloyds Banking Group. I was there for the better part of 2.5 years as design director for enterprise, and basically ran design across all of the enterprise functions, which is finance, risk, payments, fraud, financial crime, as well as the digital platform and data. I had an opportunity about a year or so ago actually less than a year ago now, to move to Abu Dhabi. And the thing that really interested me about Abu Dhabi is the proposition here around identity in particular.
Okay.
In my years of doing digital transformation, the one thing I've learned is no matter how good we get at digital transformation, we're always doing it in silos. So the silo could be a product, it could be a particular organization, and most of these boundaries are organizational boundaries. Because when we talk about digital transformation, let's talk about from a bank perspective, or from an insurer's perspective, or from a retailer's perspective. They're looking at their own boundaries, which is great, by the way, which is absolutely fantastic. When we're taking digital transformation to the limit there. But I think we've got to the limit there, quite frankly. When you think about digital transformation, truly from an end user's perspective, an end user's life journey is not neatly bound by an organization. It crosses these boundaries and it crosses these ecosystems. And it's that really that drives, for me, true digital transformation. And the foundation stone for me, in terms of the technology and the capability that we need, is identity. Okay. The ability to recognize a customer, a resident, a person in the ecosystem throughout that ecosystem and join it up. And I think that's where the next real inflection point for digital transformation is. The power of that is amazing when you start to think about it. So that's really what's attracted me to the opportunity here in Abu Dhabi and with CallSign.
So from what you're saying there, it's a matter of identity. So I think your point around structure of organizational viewpoint of the world was one I hear quite regularly, as in, this is our view of the world, but customers don't fit neatly and discreetly. And I suppose every one customer is unique, etc. And what for you has been unique within the uniqueness, so to speak, of the region that you cover? Like, what challenges do you see that are faced that are unique to that region that maybe wouldn't exist elsewhere?
So I think with Abu Dhabi, it's not just a challenge, it's also the opportunity.
Sure.
Let me just touch on what I think the opportunity is and where the challenge is as well. So we selected essentially Abu Dhabi as a center of excellence for us from a technology perspective, for engineering and for our global SOC for 2-3 key reasons. Okay. One is, let's go back to 2019, where His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, launched Ghadan 21, which is Abu Dhabi's 10 billion pound accelerator program. And the intent behind that, boss, is fundamentally to transform the Emirates economy, the knowledge ecosystem, and the community. When that was established, there's been over 50 initiatives rolled out in the first year, including the launch of Hub 71. Which is Abu Dhabi's catalyst for digital transformation. Now, Hub 71 is essentially an ecosystem designed ground up to foster entrepreneurs, established businesses like ourselves, launching in Abu Dhabi. And it brings together, if you like, several really important elements, from startup launch success, access to capital, access to market opportunities, mentorship and support, as well as a kind of a favorable business environment, and importantly, access to diverse talent. And I'll come to that in a moment. Okay. All that for us. But Hub 71 is backed by Mubadala investment company, Wealth Fund. I think everybody's heard of them. AUM about 232 billion. And has partnerships with Microsoft, Abu Dhabi Investment Office, and Abu Dhabi Global Markets, to name a few. So in this community, when you look at it and walk the halls here, you'll find everything from international tech giants to established firms like ourselves, as well as startups. And the businesses range from VCs, agri-tech, health tech, cybersecurity, crypto exchanges, and actually a whole range of innovative propositions. Now, I've been here since April of this year. When I look at the place, I've seen the place grow and develop significantly in that time. Hub 71's grown from, 35 startups from the beginning of 2020 to 100 now. And as a result of that, this ecosystem is thriving, it's evolving. On the ground, there's an amazing feel, there's a buzz to the place, there's a lot of interaction with the businesses and at a social level with members in the ecosystem. And that's through both organized kind of community events like the Founders Forum, which I'm a part of, as well as impromptu and kind of more spontaneous gatherings. So, I mean, I get up early in the morning, go do the usual school run, sure, and we look forward to getting to work. So for what it means for us and why we chose here, we've kind of, the key things we're doing here was fundamentally our engineering and our development center of excellence. And that's a and also our Global Security Operations Center here in Abu Dhabi. Again, the trigger for that is UAE's vision of 2071 to place digital transformation, kind of right at the heart of the national strategy and economy. And it made sense for us to do this because we can clearly see a commitment to investing in that technology in the ecosystem and growing the local talent. So, I mean, that's really kind of partly why we're here. The other thing this place gives us is, if you look at Abu Dhabi and UAE, it's a very digitized society already.
Right.
I mean, if you think about where, love them or loathe them, identity card based, but what that enables is an interaction with private government institutions, and your identity is known. So we're starting at that point where identity is already known across these organizations, but the digital instantiation of that is a very, very poor instantiation. It's still essentially a physical process that's been digitized. And this is where we're playing. So it gives us the opportunity to use that and experiment and really develop deeper journeys. To the extent that, let me bring it to life a little bit, Ross, in terms of what we do. We've got the way I've just kind of depicted the way digital transformation is taking place. It's a bit of a sweeping statement, but let me just kind of characterize it. Over the past, 10, 15 years, we've moved businesses at pace online, but we've essentially taken bricks and mortar, physical processes, and digitized them. Instead of really going back to a zero-based design, thinking about digital natively, how best can we do this in a digital context? And a good example of that is, for example, taking your passport photograph and sending it to someone to prove who you are.
Okay.
I mean, that is a physical process that was essentially digitized. I mean, the trouble with that is it lacks security. It's not privacy preserving and causes a lot of friction in the journey. So users forget passwords, fraudsters can steal them. In fact, if you think about fraud, scams, bots, social engineering, and malware, which are rampant, these are just symptoms of a bigger problem, which is that digital identity is broken. And what that really is driving is a lack of trust in digital. So we need to rethink this problem, and we need to know how we're going to identify residents and customers more effectively. And if you look at today's solutions, the way they work is actually, they don't really identify users. What they do is they identify fraud and deal with the fraud, which is no bad thing, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But you know what it is? It's a massive game of whack-a-mole. Because when you go bang, I'm going to get that one, I'm going to get the next one, I'm going to get the next one. But guess what? They're appearing everywhere. And what you get yourself into is this kind of arms race and this struggle to keep up with the fraudsters. And you know what? The numbers are clear. We're losing that battle. We really are losing that battle. So we've got to rethink this proposition. And that's exactly what we've done at CallSign. So we've turned that problem on its head. So what we do is that we have developed unique technology that positively identifies genuine users. And in essence, that gives us two things. It gives us the ability to deliver safety and minimal friction for genuine users, as well as ensuring that bad actors are blocked out. So this is now being used to underpin digital trust across financial institutions, governments, and commerce globally. To give you an example of where we are, an indication of that, we're securing over 60 billion we secured over 60 billion transactions last year in the UK alone, digital transactions in the UK alone. And again, to bring it to life, here's my mobile phone. Through a simple swipe, or the way you do your path, or even the way you type on a keyboard, we can detect with almost 99% certainty that it's you and not somebody else. So just think about that. Someone with your user ID and password typing it in, we will know it's not you and know it's somebody else.
Sure.
And provide that challenge. And so not only is it safer and more secure, it's also more customer friendly. And this is why I made the statement I made earlier, which is we believe it's the missing foundation to true digital transformation. If you think about who we're doing digital transformation today, really without really knowing who's on the other side of that digital channel. Now we do. And if we can extend that across the ecosystem, we can do transformation across the ecosystem and not just in these silos.
Fantastic. I suppose that's a unique perspective on understanding kind of behavior and intent to understand and predict the authenticity of somebody, because you've got all of the details that can be stolen, but this adds that extra layer, which is fascinating to me. It sounds like the world is ripe for this. You've established product market fit, you've identified where that market is, and you're growing, and that's a great story. I want to get into the Emirates for a moment, if I can, because I've had the good fortune of working there and doing business there briefly. Visiting and doing business, should I say? A very unique infrastructure, transformation from purely a transport base, a hub for global commerce today. How do you find that's supported by, government, by immigration, by, education, etc.? What does it's a very diverse population. Just take us through what's unique about the Emirates, if you would.
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on this a little bit, Ross, but let me just kind of get into that. What strikes you, actually, even from 5 years ago, if you were here 5 years ago, you looked at this place, it was still a bit of parts of it were still a bit of a desert. You could see the construction work taking place. When you just walk into this facility, it is a world-class facility that I'm in right now. And it's a hub for attracting entrepreneurs and innovators. And the key elements, I think, for me, that it's providing, I can see all the capabilities that are important for us to scale, as an example, right? We've got the ambition to scale to over 1,000 employees over the next few years. And this place is going to give us that opportunity. And those key factors, when I think about them, are, first and foremost, I can see a long-term commitment to investing and growing in the tech ecosystem here. Yeah. And that's a diverse ecosystem that plays off each other. There's an interplay between all these propositions, quite frankly, but it's a diverse ecosystem, and it's closely connected, which is absolutely fantastic for us. It's important to us that there are other big, small, medium technology organizations who we can share ideas and challenges with and potentially collaborate with. There's a wealth of knowledge here and experience with VC, with government programs and global conglomerates to partner with and help guide and develop business. So we're doing a lot of work here with Hub 71, with ADGM, and we have access to, quite frankly, if you look at the director generals and the teams that run these organizations, they're deeply connected into industry. And they are not just connected at a kind of really high level, they live and breathe the challenges and issues that society face. And they're very clear on some of the direction they want to go with the society. And they put markers down for us as well. And we can engage in a conversation with them in terms of how we can start to digitize further, give value to the residents of this place, as well as the consumers here, and attract, be a beacon to attract talent here. And that ecosystem is really critical for scale-ups as well as hyper-growth companies like us. And the key thing is, it's ready-made. It's already here. We're not having to wait for it to turn up. It's already here. And I'll add to that and say look, for the past 10, 15 years in London, I've been a hiring manager. I've been hiring engineers, consultants, the works. Sure. There's one of the biggest challenges I have in London, and not just in London, actually, various places in the world, is just getting good talent and retaining good talent. I can only tell you the story that our journey here, right? This time, it's our 1 year anniversary. This time last year, we had one person in Hub 71, our VP for engineering. We're now 75 people in the UAE, 55 people here in Abu Dhabi, in Hub 71, with a plan to grow to 100 people by the end of the year and 170 next year. Mostly highly skilled engineers and operations staff. For me to do that kind of turnaround in London was really difficult to do.
Interesting.
Really, really difficult to do. I'd love to hear the pains of others. I know in my network, this is one of the things that we always talk about, is getting access to that type of skill set, that skill base, and attracting them and keeping them, quite frankly. If I think about it, it's also from a kind of our colleagues' perspective and what attracts them. because that's really important. The stickiness, making sure people are here and stay here. It's a highly desirable place for them to live, for both individuals and families. It takes kind of all the hygiene factors as well as the motivation factors, if you like. So it provides stability, security, good schooling, a great health system, and a high standard of living. And importantly, it gives them opportunities. It allows them to aspire, develop themselves and their careers, which is exactly why they want to come here to do that kind of work. And because that support system's here, because you've got the talent, I think the opportunities here in front of us are endless, quite frankly.
It's very interesting you say that. I mean, we are a talent agency by trade, and we see this every day of the week. And it's interesting you mentioned the UK there. I did a piece of work recently in the enterprise business development space and spec'd out a position for a candidate, and there is a 41% overhang, meaning that there are 8,238 jobs advertised for a particular position, but there are less than 5,000 remotely qualified candidates in that space. So that's without getting into the detail of the niche of what it is they have the skill set and background doing and selling with key relationships in industry, etc. So that number could be whittled down considerably thereafter. It's quite frightening, and there is an absolute war on talent. And it's really interesting to hear that the location in and of itself is an attractive factor, because you're drawing folks in rather than headhunting and grabbing them with crazy, because the obvious thing to do is salary, right? That's the obvious thing to do. But that's effective, and people have to be paid for what they're worth, and I get all that. But if you have a baseline ecosystem that supports that, and no income tax is certainly one of them, there's no doubt about it. And one of the things that struck me in the Emirates was that you don't advertise the petrol or gas prices, because there's no point. It's just for nothing anyway. So, and everyone drives a beautiful vehicle in any case. But I think that's really, really key, that you've got that ecosystem that makes that happen. And one of the things that I wanted to get into, just as a natural follow on from that, was you mentioned, or you touched upon, obviously we've got that great ecosystem there. What's the future look like? So you mentioned about further digitalization in that future. What does that mean? Where else are we headed, and what have we not got to thus far? That we, maybe we could go into the metaverse that Facebook are taking us to. I don't know, but maybe tell us what that looks like in your world for CallSign. What's the future going to hold for us?
I think there's an immediate, and I'm speaking from an identity perspective here, but it goes wider than that. I think there's kind of immediate sets of opportunities for us in this space. One is to really do something about fraud. This very concept of positively identifying who's on the other end of that channel, and only providing a channel for the right users to get into. So you just lock out the bad actors. That has got to be the kind of fundamental shift we've got to have in the way we deal with fraud. Otherwise, we're losing. We're going to lose this game every time. Right? That's one thing. And that has the ability then to start to disrupt some major industries, payments, the way we authenticate ourselves, the way we prove ourselves in payments and e-commerce journeys. That's precisely the things that we're proving here. And those are kind of the immediate opportunities for us here. But where that extends to, it's really down to, how far does your imagination go, right? And that's really where it comes down to. And we don't have the answers for everything, but we're kind of a foundation set of capabilities that are going to allow others to build on that capability and really disrupt other industries. Think about it for a second. Identity, how do we use it in the travel business?
Okay.
In order for me to book a holiday and go to a place, how many bits of paper and what do I have to go through in order to get to my desired location and get the services that I want? Just think about rental in this place, even with a digitized economy here, renting something here, there's so much paperwork we go through, fundamentally around proving who you are. Because we've taken these processes and just digitized a manual process. Now, if you've got an identity that's under the control, the sovereignty of the user, it's my identity, right? I own it.
Okay.
And I am now giving permission to parts of that ecosystem to use it, so that I can get the services I want and when I want them. Those journeys can get disrupted. The scope for disruption is massive there. And that's purely from an identity perspective. I don't think there's a single industry that we cannot disrupt with the use of identity. And that means new opportunities for new players and developing new entrepreneurs will come out of this. There's absolutely no two ways about this in my mind. And generating more revenue. Fundamentally, as it generates more value for customers.
I think you've touched on there, that's a game changer, is the fact that you own the identity. And I think that the aversion that people have, and this is particularly prevalent in a post-COVID world where we've seen mass levels of government, I suppose, drive towards, health passports, vaccination mandating, and that's a very politically divisive issue. And it brings in all sorts of question marks around privacy and control and access to that. And big government, right, which spooks a lot of folks. I think what you've said there that's fundamentally different, that's a game changer, is the fact that you own the identity, not the government, that you are in control of that. And if you can give that layer of accessibility or dual control to yourself and a third party, then there's no real cause for concern because you have the power. It's democratizing, if I've gotten that correct, have I?
Yeah, well, let me just clarify a point, I think. We are not saying that we want to own identity. Let me just be clear on that. We have to recognize the social and cultural differences globally. In the UAE, in the Middle East, is there an issue with government-owned run identity? I don't think there is much of an issue here. Sure. It's widely accepted. It is the norm. There are no voices here crying out for that kind of change. Go to the UK, go to Europe. Yes, most definitely. Yeah. But you know what? Our strategy has always been one of identifying where we think the source of that identity is. What is the true source of identity? Who in the ecosystem is holding the keys to the kingdom, as it were, the key to identity, and making that accessible through the channels so that behaviorally, we're able to, at the point you need it, rely on that identity. So for us here in the Middle East, it could be a government-backed scheme, as well as, quite frankly, if you think globally, if you think about the one industry that has a regulatory obligation to know who their customer is banking. Sure. They do their onboarding and they are panned if they get that wrong. There are strict regulations that they have to follow. The consequences are just dire for them if they do not follow that, quite frankly. And it's our ability to unlock, that's why we focus in financial services first and foremost. It's our ability to unlock that identity network with the banks that really is propelling what we're doing right now. Okay. No, that's very clear. That makes a lot of sense. I suppose just shifting gears here for a minute. You mentioned that you'll be 100 folks by the end of this year, and you're planning to scale out to 170 next year. That's not easy. How do you do that effectively? Because we've had a few folks on the show here where you've kind of moved from being a founder to being a CEO, which is a transition. Then you've got this kind of initial kind of rock star profile that you hire, which is where your core building blocks of your org. Then you transition into scale function, what as I call scale function. And what I mean by that is that you've got rock stars in place who set the tone, who've documented out what you do, who you are, what you believe in. And then you hire really good, well-educated, smart folks who have some level of experience, but can learn and adapt and scale. How do you go about doing that? Talk to me about culture, talk to me about leadership and what your plans are for the future there. So, I mean, that's critical. For us, and throughout my career, actually, one of the key things we look for success is the team itself, the core team. Mm. It's important for us that we establish a core backbone team, and from various disciplines, as it were, but sharing the vision for what we have at CallSign, sharing the CallSign vision, and are bought into it, lock, stock. Mm-hmm. So that you think about it from a security operations center perspective, or from an engineering perspective, or from just a general operations or a management perspective, when we're hiring people in, yes, we're looking for talent, without a doubt. We're looking for the right talent. But we're also looking for people who are excited about what we're doing, who see our story and can see that vision, and are, in a sense, emotionally invested in it as well. I can get emotionally invested in it. I think that's really important for us because this is not an easy gig. As you know, startups is not an easy, it's a lot of hours people spend just to get the first customer over the line, once you get the first customer over the line, and then keeping them live. There's a lot of hard work that goes into that, don't get me wrong. And it's that vision of where we're going and what we're doing that really keeps these guys going, this team going. And I see that in the team here today. If I look at when there was just a handful of people, like my arms around them, to where we are today,
Sure.
and I walk around the room here and I speak to the rooms and I speak to the guys here, I can see that they are excited about what we're doing. There's absolutely no two ways about that. And do you know what? We're going to find people who aren't excited about it, but that's fine. Because they're doing a service, we're giving them something in kind, we know what they're doing for us, and we're doing something for them. And if we can give them the opportunity to develop themselves and move on to other things, I'm all for that, quite frankly. We're all part of the same ecosystem. But we do encourage our guys, our teams to stay with us and get them to buy into the vision. Yes, the remuneration is important. All that stuff is really, really important. But when you come back down to the values, it's that openness that we have, the transparency in what we do is really important to us. And a big mantra that we have is around diversity as well. We want to see a diverse workforce here. And we don't just want to see a purely foreign, one of the dangers, I guess, of an organization like this is we get a workforce that is fundamentally a foreign workforce only. Sure. We want to bring in local talent as well and nurture the local talent. We want to bridge that gap. So all of these things are really quite important to us as to who we are and what we want to do. One of the things that are important to the founders and to myself is also giving the opportunity for our colleagues to bring their families over as well. We're on the go back to the talent question. One of the things that makes this a great talent pool is that we're actually on the doorstep of two massive talent pools. Think about the talent pool that exists in India and Pakistan. Just in those two countries alone, let alone the rest of the region. There are amazing talent pools there. And the opportunity that we have to bring really talented youngsters over who have got quite big challenges at home, economically, financially, but bring them over, give them some stability, and allow their families to prosper. That is a big thing for us as well. That's part of really what we're trying to do here as well, is to bridge that gap and make it more inclusive and allow people the opportunity to develop themselves and for the betterment and intent for the individuals and for the families.
Wonderful. Wonderful. No, that's a great summation of how you scale. And as you grow as an organization, as a leader, how do you find delegation? What are some of your core leadership values and belief systems that have helped you to thrive in your career so far?
I think for me, the biggest learning is to surround myself with people I trust and delegate to them and allow them to do their jobs, quite frankly. I think I went on a bit of a personal journey. I'll be transparent with you and I'll be open and honest. I went through a bit of a control freak.
Okay.
This personal journey of, having a finger in every pie, quite frankly, from an engineering perspective, from business development, everything. Yeah. I really want to know what's going on. Not just because I want to know, because I love being immersed in all those things. But that takes the opportunity away for the teams to develop themselves and individuals to stand out and actually grow a thing that they feel proud of. And so for me, I've been on a journey, learning to step back, pull back, give the people, colleagues the opportunity to have that vision and grow it and take it in a direction. And I'm there to support them, guys. So I'm more of a kind of mentor coach, if you like, rather than getting in there and being prescriptive about how they should do things. Let them solve their problems for themselves. And that's a big thing to let go, I have to tell you.
I can see it in you, no doubt about it. For me, that comes down to DEA, right? Delegation, number one. So the willingness to do that, and that's through a learning, right? E is enablement. So being able to say, well, look, I may have delegated, but have I given folks the tools? Have I given them the training to actually be successful? And then the third linchpin then for this to all work is accountability. So I have no problem giving you the access and showing you and teaching you, but we're all accountable here. We're all mutually bought into the end goal. And I think if you can layer that on top of transparency, where everyone can see what everyone else does, it's very apparent that we're all on the same journey together, and we're all, headed to the same direction. I found that a mantra for success. I don't know if you'd support that, but that's been my winner for sure.
I will, definitely. I mean, the guys here, the folks here, fundamentally, we made clear to them, essentially we drive through a set of outcomes. What are the outcomes we want to deliver? Right. How you get there, we leave, that's your thing. That's what you specialize. Tell us how you can get there. But here are the key outcomes. Can we sign up to those outcomes? And we may not get to them, quite frankly. These outcomes are not written in stone. We may not get to them.
Interesting.
But we're on this journey, and we know directionally where we're going with these outcomes. And when we start to get there, we'll get closer to it. And we're always in the process of where we're evaluating. That comes from, and our ability to course correct as and when we need is critical. Yeah. And that's really only happens when you've got trust in the team and they're able to talk and they're able to share their ideas and feel as though they've got something that it's going to be heard. But importantly, the accountability question is a big thing. For us in the team, it's a case of not just saying that what's wrong, but what's the answer and how you're going to get there. It's all right to stand there and say there's something you don't like, there's something that's going wrong, but equally take the next step. Tell us what we can do about it and tell us how we're going to measure it. And that for me is really quite critical.
I had a sales leader in my career, and one of his amazing phrases was, he was an American guy, but he said, "In God we trust," which everyone knows, right? But all others bring data. And I found that phenomenal because it allows you to say that everyone's accountable, and it allows you to hold your customers to account. It allows you to hold, God forbid, family members to account, and it allows you to hold, your team to account as well. So if somebody's saying something, that's fine. You're allowed to say something, but share with me the data that supports that position,
And in an engineer, I can't tell you just how critical that is in an engineering organization.
Sure.
The dynamic, the mindset that we're always trying to break in an engineering organization is one of, I've got a problem, I've got a bug, I'll go fix it. Nobody needs to know about it, I'll go fix it. And it's like, you've got pride about the code you're writing, but actually we don't want that. We want people to be transparent. I want to see the defects on the board by team on the board. Not that I'm going to do something about it. I want the teams to see it and take proud in ownership of what they do. And when they come and see the defects or the function points that have been delivered team by team, they get into this competitive spirit amongst themselves. They have a sense of, they work in the morning, come in the morning, they can see the board, they can see the number of defects they've got, say, I want to do something about that because I want to do better than those guys. And they have this kind of camaraderie. And without the data, without you being present, you never get that dynamic. You always get, things are hidden. There's a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability. Yeah. And nothing needs to be said once the data is available, because the data tells a story.
Oh, yes.
And so that for me is now that kind of thinking, we're still on a journey here, don't get me wrong. Sure. We're not there. We're still on, we're not there. But that is the kind of thinking we're instilling, and that's the kind of culture we're trying to develop here. So that people are not put down for the mistakes, but rather, and failures, but rather we identify what those things and celebrate the fact that we fix those things. Now, hopefully we'll get better as we do that, right? Without a doubt. That's the hope, that's the intent. But without that, I think we get caught back into this kind of spiral of lots of defects. What do we start to build technical debt, and nobody really faces into it properly. And that for me is one of the key learnings based on what we've seen over the past 10, 15 years.
Couldn't agree more. And I think it's a generational thing as well. I spoke to my dad's friends, all business guys, entrepreneurs, etc., who sort of said, don't like this new world. When I ran a factory, I used to say, we'll try this product and we'll see how it goes. And I said, yeah, that's fine. You can still do that, but you can make better decisions based on the fact that you know what the market has told you thus far, what the gaps are and where you're headed. And that's why data analytics companies are going through the roof. We're doing a lot of work at the moment, hiring for data analytics companies. And there's a reason that they're in demand, is because people want to make better decisions. And it's not a matter of being wrong less often. It's a matter of putting them on a foundation of better success. And that's the kind of world we live in. And I think transparency is absolutely key to that. Couldn't agree with you more. I think there's a whole show in and of itself on that topic in my mind, which I'd welcome you on in the future for sure. But just as we round the corner here and wrap things up, there's no doubt in 8 short months you've really had a trail blazed and a trajectory that's exciting to witness and experience. How do you stay organized? How do you kind of conduct your day to day? What are some of the hacks that you use? Maybe it's a little gizmo or gadget you've had. What do you do to stay productive and on top of what I'd imagine is a fiercely busy day?
One of the things uniquely Abu Dhabi has allowed me to do is I do the school run in the morning. God, school starts early here.
Okay.
School starts early here, right? So there's a 7:30 drop off.
Wow.
And school starts pretty soon after that. I'm in the office early doors.
Yeah.
So we keep to UK time. We try and support the UK office here. So from most of the organisations, we'll be turning up at 10, working till 6 in the evening, that kind of thing. I'm here first thing in the morning. Gives me some quiet time. Mm-hmm. Time to reflect and think about my day and the week and what I want to get done. That thinking time for me is critical. There's absolutely no two ways about that. Sure. I can just remember in London, sat on the tube, trying to do that with all the noise around you.
Been there, yeah.
Yeah. So that's been a refreshing thing for me here. It's just that giving myself the space to think. And sometimes not even think about anything, quite frankly, just let thoughts come to me, right? And I think that's really important. We find one of the things I found really difficult to cope with over a long period of time is just doing something all the time. 9 to 5, 6 till 7 in the evening, whatever it's going to be. Just trying to keep that pace. Yeah. There's always something to do. Sure. And never enough time to think. So that for me is a critical thing. Then allowing, prioritizing a lot of that work that I need to do. So there's a lot to do, but what's really going to give me the most impact?
Outcomes.
Key outcomes I want to drive. And quite frankly, being relentless on those until I get it to a point that I'm comfortable or happy with. May not have completed it, but you know what? I've got the most I want to get out of that and I can turn my attention to something else. Now, there are tools you can use to do that. Quite frankly, I spend most of the time in Microsoft Teams or in kind of, I'm a plain text guy, quite frankly.
Old school. I hear you.
Old school. But the ability just to have that on my mobile device to remind myself, these are things, have I done them? Yes, I have. Those things are important for me. Equally, I think I cover quite a diverse set of things here in the office. I'm covering engineering, operations, there's a whole set of things here. Carving the time out to spend with the heads of those functions is also important for me, and hopefully important for them. But really, just again, to stay on top of what's taking place and to connect between the departments and make sure, for example, the prioritization in our backlogs, in engineering, really is truly reflecting what's taking place and just being able to do a deep dive every once in a while in that space so that I can keep the conversation alive with customers as well when I go see customers and clients. So those things are kind of the things that I use. Having a team around me and who are themselves really well organized and make sure we're punctual and get things done. You know what it's like in a sales cycle?
Yes.
Following up on leads, making sure you go through all those things, make sure all that stuff. we kind of, we drive that hard, and we have to drive that hard. So there's that kind of ethos that we have, that we try to kind of permeate throughout the organization. Is there's no reason for us to be behind on anything if it's in our gift. We are always at our customers' beck and call, but we should always be on top of our backlog and what we're doing. So those are the things that I think are kind of the key things that I fall back on.
It makes a ton of sense. And there's a common theme I hear when I ask that question: starting the race ahead of everybody else. You know, I'm a big believer in getting up early. I'm an early riser. I'm most productive then. But if you can do that in a quiet period, I have 3 young children, and that for me is critical to get ahead of my day as well. And I find that that's a game changer. You know, you're starting a 100-meter sprint, 10 or 20 meters on the track before everybody else, and whether it's Usain Bolt or Linford Christie behind you, you have a fighting chance. So that's the competitive nature of the market we live in, and so it should be. But if you can start ahead of other folks, then you have a fighting chance. So look, I really want to thank you for your contribution, Saeed, today. This has been a fantastic learning experience to get to know more about you, your org, and the ecosystem you're involved in thriving in. I'd welcome you on future shows, and appreciate all the input for sure.
Absolutely right, Samir. Thank you very much. Love to be on again.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. Take care.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Global Tech Leaders Podcast, designed for both established and aspiring career-focused tech rock stars, as well as helping leadership figure out how to speak global in today's multicultural world. For further details, check out sf-talent.com.